Welcome to Elite Beyond Borders with Odai. This special, standalone episode marks 1 year since the fall of the Syrian regime. This episode uses the fall of the Assad regime as a political science case study to show how state violence, at different levels, can transform into state terrorism.
Violence is deeply embedded in human history. Yet the critical question remains: when does violence cease to be a legal instrument of order and instead become a tool of terror?
Violence retains its legitimacy when it remains within the contemporary legal framework and under the authority of constitutional law. Terrorism emerges when violence is exercised outside that framework, when coercive power becomes privatized and directed towards subordinating society instead of safeguarding the public sphere.
In modern political systems, legitimate violence is structured across two principal levels. One, the criminal level. This encompasses universally condemned crimes such as theft and murder. Its disciplinary measures are widely accepted because they serve the public good and preserve societal order. Two, the national security level. This domain is far more perilous. Its boundaries are deliberately vague, providing rulers with the latitude to shift from governance to authoritarian domination, not in defense of the state, but in defense of those who control it. It is here that networks of privilege emerge, informal alliances deeply embedded within the security and military sectors, gradually supplanting constitutional authority as the ultimate source of coercive power. State institutions then evolve from regulating violence onto manufacturing it. The unprotected citizen becomes the primary target, not for violating the law, but for demanding that the state abide by its own laws. Thus appears state terrorism, violence devoid of legal justification, due process, or institutional restraint. As confidence in the legal order erodes, counter-violence rises within society. Political confrontation fractures into conflict between identities. Pre-modern loyalties are revived, not out of conviction, but survival. Then comes international violence, foreign interventions operating above and beyond legal sovereignty, endangering life and property simply because individuals inhabit a geopolitically contested space. The civilian becomes the casualty of three intersecting forces: a repressive state, a fragmented society, and competing external powers. From this vantage point, one conclusion is unavoidable. Terrorism is not a regional trait nor a cultural product. It is the direct symptom of the collapse of legal authority, when coercive power becomes privatized instead of remaining a public mandate. Syria as an analytical case. Few countries illustrate this breakdown more starkly than Syria, a single landscape that housed all forms of violence simultaneously. Following Assad's fall and the decline of Russian and Iranian influence, Syria entered a phase of relative Western primacy, where the United States and its allies hold the greatest sway over the balance of power. Yet, such developments do not substantiate claims that the world has conclusively entered a multipolar era. Current shifts remain insufficient to deduce a settled architecture for the international system, or to assert that rising powers will consolidate their influence into a reliable structural polarity.
Despite the regime's collapse 1 year ago, conflict persisted, manifesting as post-war fractures within society. A measure of central authority emerged, but still falls short of establishing a lawful and legitimate monopoly on violence rooted in constitutional sovereignty. The Syrian civilian under the Assad era thus became a victim of violence that represented neither a functioning state nor a cohesive society, but the raw interests of power and the networks entrenched behind it. The foundational principle. The boundary between violence and terrorism is not defined by geography, culture, or flags, but by legal legitimacy and whether the exercise of force is directed toward the protection of human dignity or its subjugation.
This concludes our interlude episode. In the next release, we return to the main series to examine the future of the geopolitical map and the cultural transformations intertwined with it. See you in the next installment of Elite Beyond Borders.